Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. My name is Lewis Gray. I'm a senior marketing manager here at Disseminate. We've got a very special guest on the podcast today. So we're joined today by Sarah Rosgar O'Connell from Awin. Now, Awin were very much early adopters of employee advocacy, and they actually launched a program with Disseminate way back in 2017, so right at the beginning. We've been working with them since then, and we've seen their program evolve from what we'd call Employee Advocacy 1.0, which is very much just uploading your latest blog post to your employee advocacy platform, asking your employees to share it, to what we now call Employee Advocacy 2.0, which is more focused around employees growing their personal brands, sharing authentic stories, and then obviously sharing company content as well, but just in a different way to what we saw in those early days. And it kind of relates to the changing landscape of LinkedIn and social media overall. So we wanted to talk to Sarah about, firstly, this change and how Awin have navigated this change and really pivoted their program to ensure that it's still a thriving success in 2025. So before we get into the episode, one thing I did just want to plug is our employee advocacy benchmark report for 2025. So if you are curious to learn more about the current employee advocacy landscape, if you want to understand how other program managers are managing their programs, that's everything from the types of content they're asking employees to share to how many times per week they're asking them to share and beyond. It's all in there. So it's a 25-page, just chocker full of value, and we'll link to it in the description of this episode. Wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, it will be there. But let us know your thoughts. Just share the hashtag EA Benchmarks on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you guys and understand how you're using the report to your advantage. But otherwise, enjoy the episode and let's get into it. Awesome. So, Sarah, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your role at Awin?
Sure. So I'm the global head of communications at Awin. So I oversee a team that manages and leads and oversees our communication strategy, both internally and externally. So from an external perspective, that's really maintaining and improving our company's reputation. So across channels like PR, social media, employee advocacy, and internally it's helping improve employee engagement, so managing our internal content calendar, working with stakeholders to communicate employee initiatives.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I know we've spoken about this, but just for the listeners' sake, we wanted to get you on today because Awin were one of the earliest adopters that I can remember of employee advocacy, and the social media landscape has shifted so much in that time, but the world of employee advocacy has shifted so much, really. Was it 2017 you guys launched the program?
Yeah, that's right. You could say we're like the OGs of employee advocacy.
One of the originals.
Yeah.
I love that. And you guys worked together, right, Elliot, Sarah?
Yeah,
We
back
did.
when I ran the customer success team, Sarah and I spent quite a lot of afternoons in a central London office.
Yeah, we
I
did.
recall.
And me sending lots of panicked emails when sometimes things would go awry.
It was early doors, but it was good fun back then.
It was.
Amazing. Well, I'm glad. I feel like this has been a long time in the making, this episode, so I'm glad we can make this happen. But Sarah, right off the bat, obviously, as I mentioned, you've been working on employee advocacy for years, and I mentioned the changing landscape of social media and employee advocacy. But in your eyes, how has the landscape changed since Awin first adopted it in 2017?
Yeah, so when we first adopted it, I feel like there really weren't that many companies doing it. It was just kind of a coincidence that I had just found out about it. I went to a social media conference, I think earlier that year, where O2 had shared a bit of employee advocacy that they've been doing. And just before that, I'd been approached by another company. But when I was first approached, I was like, oh, this sounds a bit strange. Because LinkedIn wasn't how it was today, right? It was only, if anyone was doing, just a handful of people doing personal branding. For the most part, LinkedIn was really just where you looked for jobs, sort of like an online CV. So not the place that it is today. So then, yeah, when I heard O2 was doing it, I was like, oh, this sounds great. But, people probably love talking about O2 because it's like, B2C, it's kind of a cooler company. I don't know if people would really be up for, it sounds a bit harsh, but I don't know if at the time people would have been up for talking about our company on their personal social media channels. So I was honestly quite skeptical because, yeah, it just wasn't a thing back then. But your CEO, Bradley, did a good job of convincing us to give it a go. So, yeah, I believe we were one of your very first customers.
You very much were. And I think it's really interesting that like shift, right, from however long ago that is, 6, 7 years ago, even more, where people have gone from seeing LinkedIn as, hey, this is just an online CV and this is like not really a place. And there were, as you say, like a handful, like so few. Gary Vaynerchuk was basically the only person posting on LinkedIn and just had this huge audience because he was the only person that did it. And it's something that I still remember as something we used to talk about quite a lot, and this is less so now, but a stat we always used to talk about was 1 in 10 people posts onto LinkedIn regularly, which means 9 out of 10 people do not post onto LinkedIn. So it was super easy to become top 10% LinkedIn user just by posting something onto your LinkedIn profile. And then the people that were good at it, the people that were doing it well, it was so quick for them to be able to get a lot of engagement like straight off the bat. And now you're fighting with everyone.
Oh, yeah, it's really saturated.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people posting.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn now, and it seems like there's so many people posting, and it feels like there's more and more people posting. I don't doubt that there are now compared to what there was in 2017, but I imagine it's still a low percentage of the total user base.
Could be,
Because I
yeah.
think, I don't know whether it's an up-to-date stat now, but as recently as last year, we were looking at it and it was like between 750 to 850 million people using the platform. And I think the world of marketing and definitely sales and HR have adopted it, but so many people that I know, like a lot of people in my friends and my personal network who just, are on LinkedIn, they never post.
That's a good
And,
point.
when they've come to look for new job opportunities and stuff like that, I've had to kind of drill it into them, and they still have that 2017 mindset of like, no, that's just my digital resume. But Sarah, I'm curious to know from your side, obviously LinkedIn has evolved a lot, but what role do you think that's played in shifting employee advocacy strategies?
I think you have to be a lot more conscious of staying true to yourself and being authentic, because it can be so easy to get caught up in all the other things other people are saying and feeling this pressure to maybe go a bit overboard or just, try and emulate someone else. But I still think to this day, like the most engaged posts are the ones that are the most authentic and are really based on your like own experiences and expertise. Yeah, I think maybe it's a little bit more competitive in some ways, but I think, if you just, stick to what you know and what you believe in, then you can still contribute something worthwhile that people will engage with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that front. I think the other thing that's interesting is the volume has changed for the people that do post. I remember, early doors, even working with Awin, there was only so much social content you physically had as a business. It was often, really going back here, but it was often the Awin blog and the kind of events pages that you had that were often translated. I think you were probably one of the early businesses to localize so much of that content and have, hey, we're going to translate our blog into 9 different languages and have different landing pages for each of them, which was something I hadn't really seen at the time. But there was still only so much content for people to share. It was a couple of blog posts a week, whereas these days, variety is really important from an advocacy perspective, where you've got lots of content. People can pick and choose, to your point, what's authentic to them, what's important to them, not just here's the kind of company blog this week and what we've got available. I think that's been a really big shift that I've seen as well across the entire client base. Just everyone has so much more content available to share.
Agreed. And I think also we'll probably talk about this a bit more later, but you also have to kind of be a little bit more targeted, a little bit more strategic. So not just everyone posting everything, but like asking people to really think about, a company really thinking about, if we're trying to share this, who is that actually most relevant for, and which teams does it make the most sense to give them the ability to do that?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you were saying as well about mirroring what you're seeing on LinkedIn, because I find myself doing that so often. We all joke about it. I think we do see, there's a lot of cringe content on LinkedIn, I would say. And I think everybody's aware of that, but I think we sometimes pretend that it's not. But I'll find myself writing posts kind of in that similar style of voice because I've seen somebody else doing it and maybe getting a bit of attention. Then I have to kind of take a step back and just be like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just trying to play
Yeah.
ball here. But you're right, it's the authenticity that shines through. And honestly, some of my favorite, I'd say, creators on LinkedIn are people who just kind of joke about the current state of it and then
Yeah,
make original content almost spoofing that, but then that will become the kind of content that becomes more popular, and
definitely.
eventually I think authenticity will start to shine through.
Do you follow, is his name Richard Cook, the social media manager or
Yes.
whatever his job title is for Monzo? Like, he's really good at that. Like, his content is hilarious. And I think he's really built like a cult following now on LinkedIn because he's basically just making fun of himself. And
He is
yeah,
really, really good. If anyone that is listening to this is unaware of Richard Cook, he is something that will bring joy to your LinkedIn feed most days, usually with some sort of nonsense around marketing.
and heavily, heavily sarcastic. So if you don't like sarcasm, then
That's
don't
awesome.
follow him.
I do think he's the I don't know, the archetype of really what you want to be doing. It's kind of having that authenticity, but still providing value. But hopefully I'm seeing it more and more. I think that's the direction that LinkedIn is going in. It's a shift towards authenticity and just being yourself. But yeah, it's been a transition for sure. Sarah, something I think that Awin have done really well with their employee advocacy program is just making it part of company culture. So I just wanted to touch on this a little bit because I know your leadership team has historically just been very engaged in your employee advocacy program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to know how you think or how you believe that's helped drive adoption.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's just luck or maybe just the industry that we're in, but our senior leadership team really understand the value of social media and, them themselves sort of advocating for their own company. So very early on, the leadership team were very pro disseminate and wanting to share. And I think what also helped is the leaderboards, and we ran some competitions. And even before we started incentivizing it, our CEO is very competitive, so he really wanted to be at the top of the leaderboard. And you could say he had a bit of an unfair advantage. But then, it was quite fun because at the time with the US country manager, they would be like constantly competing with each other to be at the top of the leaderboard. But that was really nice because I think then you're kind of leading by example. And when, other teams and employees see that, they're like, oh, that's really cool. I mean, sometimes they might be like, oh, well, that they're the CEOs, that's why they get that much engagement. But I think it really did help to distill it down and just make people see like, look, it is kind of cool to like, big up your own company and talk about it. And there's ways to do it that isn't cringe and, can also benefit you as well. And that's another thing that we also try and educate people on, is that, yes, we want you to help promote Awin and our industry, but actually this is a really good opportunity to build your own brand or position yourself as a thought leader on your subject of expertise, whether that's if you're on our influencer team or if you're on the product team. It's the opportunity to sort of share your insights and thoughts on an Awin piece of content or an industry topic. So yeah, I think it's a combination of things. So it was like leadership adoption, the competitions, also like when employees join the company, they are prompted. So they're sort of in our onboarding, we have something that lets them know that we have this tool and it's available. We've actually just upgraded a bit, so that's even more prominent now. When they join the company, I think now they don't even need to sign up. It's just they get an email, they click, and they can just immediately log in and start playing around with it. So, but we want to enhance that further. We want to actually create trainings around like building yourself on social media, if that's what you want to do, particularly LinkedIn, because I think it can also help develop you in your career as well, because I think that is an important skill to be able to articulate your thoughts on your field of expertise. So
I think that's So interesting. The senior leadership part is something that I will always remember with the with Adam and Mark as the CEO and COO at the time chasing each
Yeah.
other. We actually
Hmm.
built, it's a very long time ago, but at the time we built a feature to be able to stop that happening if you wanted it to, because it was happening. It was so rife on your
Mm.
account where we're just seeing CEO at the top. We built a feature that you can hide those senior leaders just for the off chance. We're like, not everyone's going to want this CEO 10,000 shares above everybody else. Essentially,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah,
was
the gap
funny.
was kind of ridiculous, but I think everyone understood why, and it wasn't too off-putting. And as I said, for some people, it even motivated them to try and
I think it's such an important point. It is such a motivator, and I think you're so fortunate to be in 2017 have a CEO that was kind of digital native enough to go, actually I really understand why I should be doing this, and I really want to do this. We're building products at the moment to enable that process for senior leaders today, where they're still going, I'm not sure about that LinkedIn. I don't know whether I want to post on it as of yet, and Awin being so at the forefront of all of this, CEOs that are public and talking about all of these things early on, I think it was such a big win for the business.
and it's still so powerful. Like when our CEO Adam posts about a certain topic, when it's really tailored, like it just gets so much engagement. It encourages conversation. So, I mean, we've been tapping into that, but we definitely want to even do that more, and not just with Adam. There's plenty of other people in the business that we can also do that with. So that's definitely a next step that we want to. We've done it a bit over the past couple of years for certain topics, but we've also noticed that if we can have a bit of a collaboration and discuss a little bit in advance, like, hey, there's this important topic coming up. And it's not even necessarily something that has to be about, I don't know, like an award win or something. It could be more like serious, let's say, but just having that conversation in advance and saying like, okay, we want to talk about this. This is the key messaging. This is how we think you could, effectively talk about this. It is really powerful, and it really gets a lot of eyes on it. It gets a lot of engagement, gets conversation going. So yeah, I mean, it's still a very important tool for us for raising, reach, brand awareness, engagement. So
Yeah, and I think that's a big changing factor, right? And probably the way social media works, but advocacy as well, is that brand awareness, that visibility piece has become a much bigger piece of the puzzle. Again, a long time ago, it was just really about, can we drive web traffic with this thing?
yeah,
Does this do that? Which I think we did, quite well for anyone
yeah,
in the past. But now it's a much bigger. That's a small piece of a much bigger puzzle, I would say, where we really want to look at how much visibility, how much engagement, what's the sentiment that we're kind of driving off the
definitely.
back of all of this, not
Which
just,
was really great when you guys introduced that you could see the LinkedIn engagement metrics in
yeah,
Disseminate, because yeah, sometimes we notice. I think we had conversations about this earlier, like what was more valuable, like a click or a reaction, because actually they're two slightly different things, but obviously they kind of go hand in hand. But sometimes I had this theory that someone might react to your post to kind of acknowledge it, be like, oh, that's cool. Or maybe you've said enough in the caption that they only need to react to it. Maybe they don't click to it. So it's also kind of interesting to see, like, and does that also vary person to person? Like, is someone getting a lot of reactions, but maybe not so many clicks, and vice versa. So
yeah. I find this conversation always comes up with digital versus brand. If I'm talking to kind of marketing
yeah,
teams from that perspective, digital are website traffic. That's the
yeah.
thing I'm interested in. How do we drive
Hmm.
more clicks, more clicks, more clicks? Whereas brand will be much more reactions, awareness. I want to know
Hmm.
how many comments we got and those sort of things. It's a very different ball game. It's why having lots of stakeholders involved in this as a program. It's so far reaching in so many businesses that everyone can actually take a slice of value from it at some point.
Agree.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going from how we manage our own program, sorry, here at Disseminate, I actually value a comment just as much as a click, if not more than. It will vary, obviously, depending on the content. There is some content we upload to the platform. We encourage people to share that we want to drive traffic. It might be a recent example might be the employee advocacy benchmark report. We
Yeah.
wanted to share insights from that report, but ultimately we wanted to get this in people's hands. So it's like, okay, we want to drive clicks. But at the same time, on that same piece of content, if somebody had shared a stat from the report with maybe a screenshot from it or something along those lines, and then somebody's commented on it, it's like, okay, they're kind of engaging with it just as much. It's like they've taken the time to read it. They're obviously invested enough in employee advocacy that they care about this stat from the report, and then they've taken the time to share their thoughts. I think that's, to me at least, that's just as valuable.
I completely agree.
But I understand, again, marketing versus brand will...
Well, it's nice when you can show the picture of both, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I think with a comment, it does take quite a lot for someone to take that extra step to comment. And I think that is a win in my mind. If you've created an engaging piece of content or a post that someone felt compelled to comment on it. So
I think the important thing to consider, and this has always been my big consideration with a click, is valuable to the business directly, in the sense of, hey, we're going to the website, I might book a demo, I might buy something, whatever it might be. The value in a reaction or a comment in particular, I think they're weighted a little bit higher, but that's more visibility within the network. So yes, there's an argument to say actually likes, reactions, comments are really good early on because we drive that wider visibility. No one truly knows how the algorithm works, but we do know more likes is probably more visibility, which means more likes further down the road.
Well, that's what's at the top of your LinkedIn feed. If you go on there, it's like what your connections have liked and commented on. So yeah, exactly. I completely agree. And we also realized that there was a turning point where we obviously, we still care about the amount of clicks, but then we really start to realize the importance of making sure we get those reactions and comments on employees' posts.
Yeah, if I recall, at one point in time, and we're going back a couple of years here, but I think we were one of the top referrers of traffic to your website at one point in time.
Yep, you're still in the top 10. I checked the other day. So,
that's good to hear.
But honestly, it's really after things like direct, CPC, redirect. So I think, it's higher than our own company channels, which I heard someone else say in another podcast episode. So if that's not enough to convince people to do this, I mean, it might be kind of heartbreaking for the marketing team and the social media manager, but your employees are going to get more engagement than your company profile posts. So
that's a conversation I've had a couple of times with people that own, they own the company page. That's their kind of reporting metric, and then you turn employee advocacy on overnight and 2,000 people start sharing, and all of a sudden they go, oh, my results don't look quite as interesting as they did earlier.
Well, Sarah, we've obviously, I know we've touched on the changing landscape of LinkedIn. Something I just want to go back to, is the commenting thing. The only thing that's got me with the comments, I've realized the caveat to my point, is the rise in large language models and the amount of AI generated comments that I now see. I don't get so many on my posts, but I find it funny when I see it on other people's posts. It'll be like big creators and stuff, and people are basically just reading or writing their post back to them.
Yeah.
It's like if you're talking about employee advocacy, and they'll say the exact same thing worded differently.
Regurgitate it back.
But just full of M dashes as well. So it's come straight out of ChatGPT. But sorry, we've obviously spoken about the changing landscape going into 2025, and I guess taking into account everything that we've already discussed. I know you guys are constantly evolving your program, but what steps are AWIN taking to reinvigorate your program in 2025?
Yeah, so I touched upon it earlier. So we have experimented a bit over the past couple of years. So yeah, as Elliot pointed out, in the past, we kind of had the team segmented by region because we do localized content. And even though we're a global company, we really want to have that local expertise and local perspective. So that's why we do that. But we have experimented over the couple of years of not just looking at it on a regional basis, but on a department basis, but maybe even one step further, just a group of people that can speak to a topic. Maybe it's about an event. Maybe it's about, for example, we have a Power 100. And we did something really cool with that, where all the people who were on the panel that nominated, so it was nominating publishers, the top most interesting publishers in the space. We synced up with them in advance and asked them to create a tailored message where they spoke about the publisher or publishers that they nominated. And that was a really, and we just, in the beginning, just let them post first about it. And we really saw like a difference in the amount of engagement that the campaign got doing it that way versus just having like all staff do it. I mean, sometimes obviously there are benefits to doing that, but we want to be a lot more thoughtful about who gets to share what content and the way in which they share it. I think Elliot knows my feelings of like allowing people to use the company generated captions. I would love to turn that off, but I can see why, you don't want to create a barrier for people that aren't comfortable tailoring their own content. But I really want to get to a place where every single person sharing on Disseminate feels comfortable tailoring their content to really make it the most impactful that it can be. Because obviously the company caption is great, just to give you like an idea of, okay, this is what it's about, and this is kind of the direction we want you to talk about. But you really see, because I think there is now functionality in the platform where it shows you who's like, I can't remember the phrasing you use, like edited it, tailored it the most. And obviously those posts 99% of the time get the most engagement. So that's one thing. And the other thing is I also think I mentioned it earlier, is just really making sure that people in the company are aware of the tool. We're a big company, we're a growing company, so there's lots of new people that come into the business. And I think we just need to remember that, when people come in, even if they get an initial introduction to Disseminate, we might just need to think about moments to sort of pop up again and be like, hey, if you're not using it yet, why don't you give it a go? Here are the benefits for you. And just offering some more internal resources to get people comfortable trying out the platform. And then alongside that, we've run competitions throughout the years. And so we want to do that again, just to create a bit of, excitement, and to get people that may have not used it before, give them, dangle a little carrot to give it a go. Yeah, that's something that's worked really well in the past, and something that we want to pick up again.
That's a really nice one. That was one of the questions I was going to ask, actually, it doesn't have to be this, but if another company was struggling to keep employee engagement high within their program, would you recommend rewards as the first thing they do, or are there other tactics you've implemented that have maybe been more effective?
You can, but I would just caveat that with be careful with that, because you might then sometimes get people who are only in it for the rewards and not authentically sharing.
We've got a bunch of adults in companies that are talking on social media and just advocating for their business. We'll introduce gamification and these things, and it would just help encourage people, make it a little bit more fun. What we didn't predict was a very small subset of those individuals going, well, I'm going to cheat immediately. And that was the first thing that they went to as a concept. So we then spent about a month introducing a really comprehensive anti-cheat system to stop all of this stuff happening in the background. But we never predicted that. We never thought, people are going to really care about this and really chase it up and down. And some people weren't even doing it for the reward. People were doing it just for the visit, just for the clout. I'm at the top of the leaderboard, which blew my mind personally.
Same. It really blew my mind as well. I was like, God, this is a new one, but yeah.
So we have a feature called Boost Post. I don't know if you're using this at Awin, Sarah.
I think we've trialed it in the past, but not using it at the moment.
Okay. So it's for the listener's sake, it basically just means that you can pull posts, company posts, or posts from select individuals into the Disseminate platform, so that all of your advocates can like those posts and boost them. But you're rewarded points for doing so. So you can like it and get a certain amount of points, or you can reshare it and get some points for that. And I've seen people literally going down and liking,
everything
from this year to 2 years back, when it gets to the last week of the month, just because I've mentioned to them that they're slipping and losing their top spot on the leaderboard. But I think it's a nice problem to have. If people want to be engaged, then it shows that people are bought into this, I think.
Definitely.
It's a great problem to have. I always want to accuse our CMO of cheating, but I've gone and checked quite a few times, and he definitely isn't. But I'm constantly looking for a reason.
He's just very, very good.
He's just good.
Still fun to accuse, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Always good to accuse them, though.
But yeah, going back to your question, Lewis. So yeah, I think rewards can be a good thing to kind of kickstart the program, but I wouldn't, as Elliot pointed out, it's not necessarily like a long-term strategy, because you want people to be doing it for the right reasons. I think just trying to get your internal resources in check first. So giving some guidelines, which sounds a bit strange. It's not like you're telling people what to do, but sometimes people are a bit like, oh, posting like on behalf of my company or whatever, that's, it sounds really scary and intimidating. So just, kind of, I guess, demystifying it and maybe showing some examples. We have on our intranet something that we should definitely publicize a bit more, but we've got tips on how to tailor a post, and it can be very simple. It's not that you have to write some long essay or whatever, but most times, like with a company topic, there's probably some way that you've been a part of it or contributed to it. So just, sharing a bit about that, or throwing a few emojis, or I don't know, just something, or tagging someone that you worked with on the project. And then I think, and we definitely need to get better about this, but then just finding a way to have a good cadence of communicating, keeping people updated about the program, highlighting how the program's doing, maybe calling out some top performers, not the CEO, but some other people. And then, people can kind of look to them as an example and inspiration. So yeah, it's definitely something that you can't just kind of go hard and then leave it. Like, it does need a little bit of love and maintenance. And something that we've not always gotten right, but I think we somehow, I don't know if it's because we were early adopters, like because we instilled that quite early on in the company culture. There have been some moments where other things have had to take priority, where we've been able to take a bit of a back seat. But this year we really want to take some of our own advice and help take it to the next level.
That is fantastic advice, I think, for everybody listening. And even just going back to something you said earlier, just making it part of your onboarding, I think just getting people bought in from day one is a fantastic way to ensure continued usage and continued engagement. I'm conscious of time, but Sarah, I do just have two more questions for you. And the first one we ask every guest, and I love to hear people's answers to this, but what's the biggest win you've seen from your employee advocacy program?
So I think it was when we launched a teaser for our go-to-market launch that we did in September 2023, and we had launched it in English on our global channels the day before. And I'm now based in our Amsterdam office in the Netherlands, and I think there was just a slight delay with getting it on their channels. But someone actually physically came up to me in the office and was like, Sarah, when can I share this post? Like, when is it going to be in Disseminate? And I just love that. I just thought, oh my God, this is great. Like, it's gone viral within our own company, that people are so excited now that they're asking me like, oh, can we share something, rather than, us trying to force people to do it. So, and that actually does happen quite a lot. Like, sometimes if people know that there's something big to talk about, they'll sometimes approach my team and say, hey, when is this going on Disseminate? And I think for me, that's a really big win, when people come to us and they want to share something on their channels.
I think that just summarizes everything you said as well about making it part of company culture. People just expect this at this point. So that's amazing to hear. And then very lastly, I promise just two more questions. Who would you like to see on our podcast next?
Oh, that's a really good question. Have you had anyone from McKinsey on yet?
We haven't.
That could be a good one. I don't know. I was just really, when I saw that they were also one of your customers, I was like, oh, I'd love to know how they're using it.
Interesting. I'll ask some questions. I'll send this clip to somebody I know over there. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Honestly, it's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Really appreciate everything that you've shared. I think it's some of the best anecdotes we've had on the podcast thus far, especially the story of the CEO. But thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks' time.